So there's something kind of weird bubbling up inside the biggest tech companies in the world. A new obsession is taking hold and it's changing how people work, how they get paid, and honestly, how billions of dollars are being spent. It's a phenomenon with a bizarre new name, and believe me, it's spreading like wildfire. So, what's the deal? What is this new obsession that's quietly reshaping, the very heart of the tech industry? Well, it all kicks off with this one absolutely mind-blowing number. 210 billion. That's how many AI tokens a single engineer at OpenAI burned through in just 1 week. Now, to give you some perspective on that, that's enough data to read the entire English Wikipedia 33 times. Yeah, this is what's now considered hard work in Silicon Valley. And, this kind of extreme consumption, it's got a name: tokenmaxing. Think of it like a new form of, performance art at work. The goal isn't really to create value, it's just to burn through as many AI tokens as you possibly can. It's become this totally warped new way of measuring productivity in the age of AI. All right, so how on earth did this whole obsession with burning tokens even get started? Let's really dig into what token maxing is and, where it came from. Okay, first things first, we got to understand the currency of this whole new world: the token. A token is basically the smallest piece of information that an AI model processes. Think of it like a word, or even part of a word. Every single time you ask an AI to do something, it costs tokens. So more tokens means more computing power and, a bigger bill. And you won't believe how fast this trend just exploded. After the term was coined in early 2026, it got, institutionalized, like overnight. First, you had these token leaderboards popping up at places like Meta and Shopify, basically turning work into a public contest. And then OpenAI took it to a whole new level. They started handing out actual physical medals for hitting these huge consumption milestones. That's when you know it's a real part of the company culture. But you might be asking, why? Why would companies actually encourage this? What's driving this completely bizarre craze? Well, it turns out it's a perfect storm of technology, economics, and, of course, culture. Okay, so first up, technology. You've got these new agentic AI tools. These are AIs that can basically work on their own to get stuff done. They can run 24/7, which means a single engineer can burn through billions of tokens even while they're asleep. Second, economics. AI tokens have gotten crazy cheap, dropping like 98% in price. And this created a classic economic thing called Javin's paradox. The cheaper something gets, the more of it we use. Price went down, consumption went way up. And finally, you have culture. You know how managers love a metric they can track in real time? It just feels objective, right? Even if it's measuring completely the wrong thing. And look, this is not some grassroots thing. It is being pushed from the very, very top. Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, he literally said that he expects his $500,000 a year engineers to burn through at least half their salary in tokens. I mean, that quote sent a shockwave through the industry with a crystal clear message: using more tokens means you're creating more value. So all of this has led to something people are now calling the fourth pillar of compensation. Seriously, top engineers are now being offered these huge inference budgets as part of their hiring packages. A token A allowance is becoming just as standard as your salary, your stock options, and your bonus. It's basically a new kind of currency in the tech talent wars. Okay, but this obsession with just consuming, it comes at a massive cost. While individuals are, racing to the top of these leaderboards, the consequences for the companies and for the employees themselves are becoming, pretty disastrous. Yeah, as the engineering blogger Gergely Oros nails it, it's simply the most expensive way of looking busy. And engineers are admitting it. They're running totally pointless tasks just to keep their token numbers high. It's creating this culture of, performative productivity that rocks up massive bills but produces very little real value. And the financial data, it tells a really scary story. A staggering 85% of companies are underestimating their AI costs. And for a lot of them, this isn't just another expense. It is actively eating away at their profit margins. This runaway token consumption is basically creating a hidden financial crisis inside these companies. You know, the AT&T story is a perfect example of this problem in action. They watched their daily usage just explode to an unsustainable 80 billion tokens. So what they do? Well, their solution was pretty smart. They stopped sending every single request to a massive, super expensive model. Instead, they started using a mix of smaller, specialized models for the simple stuff. And the result? They slashed their AI costs by a whopping 90%, all without losing any quality. And the cost here isn't just about money. It's creating a brand new kind of psychological stress called token anxiety. Can you believe that? Engineers feel this constant pressure to keep their AI agents running because they're worried that any downtime is going to make them look unproductive and put their jobs on the line during the next performance review. And here is the really cruel irony in all of this. The very push for AI adoption is being used to justify what's called AI washing layoffs. Companies are pointing to all these amazing efficiency gains as the reason they need fewer people. It's creating this vicious cycle where employees are forced to get great at using the very tools that are being used to make their own jobs obsolete. So, okay, this whole approach is clearly broken, but there is a better way forward. And fixing it requires a pretty fundamental shift in our thinking. We need to completely change how we measure the value of AI itself. So, the old way, the broken way, is measuring cost per million tokens. This just measures usage. The new, much smarter way is to measure the cost per successful task. This measures actual results. The analogy here is perfect, right? You wouldn't pay a courier for how much gas they burned. You'd pay them for how many packages they actually successfully delivered. Right, so the key takeaway here is that just counting tokens is a really, really flawed metric. For one, different platforms count tokens differently, so the same text can suddenly have 15% more tokens somewhere else. Then you have the fact that a cheaper model might just spit out twice as many words, twice the tokens, but the result is garbage, completely unusable. And get this, some models do a ton of thinking in the background using like 10 times more tokens internally than they actually show you in the output. Hello, surprise bills. Okay, don't get bogged down by the formula here. The main idea is actually super simple. The true cost of an AI task isn't just the sticker price of the tokens. It's also the cost of the very expensive human engineer who has to spend their valuable time fixing the AI's mistakes. So when you factor that in, a cheap but unreliable model almost always ends up being way more expensive than a pricier, more accurate one. So really getting this shift from tokens to tasks is absolutely critical. It changes everything about how companies should manage AI, how we as employees should approach our work, and even how we think about the future of our paychecks. Look, if you're an employee, you really need to be careful about these token budgets. Unlike stock, which can grow, this is a consumable asset. Once you use it, it's gone. Companies can use these budgets to make a compensation package look way bigger than it is, while your actual cash and equity stays flat. And just remember, you're literally being paid in the very resource that's being used to train your potential replacement. Think about that. All right, so this is the new playbook. For companies, the message is loud and clear. Stop it with the token leaderboards and start measuring cost per task. Build smart systems that send easy jobs to cheap models and the hard stuff to the smarter, pricier ones. And for all of us as employees, the advice is to focus on outcomes, not usage. Negotiate for cash and equity, not for tokens you just burned through. And show how you use AI to get tasks done efficiently, not just to blow through a budget. And all of this brings us to the final, and I think the most crucial, question that everyone in the tech world really needs to be asking themselves. Are you, and is your company, using these incredibly powerful new tools to create real, tangible value? Or are you just getting swept up in the hype, performing a kind of AI theater for your bosses, for your board, and maybe even for yourselves? Because the answer to that question, well, it's going to determine whether this amazing technology leads to real progress or just becomes the most expensive way of looking busy that the world has ever seen.